Ladies and gentlemen, we've made it. We've got ourselves a college football game this week. The Colorado Buffaloes opening up their season this week. The long, cold, lonely off season is over. We get to talk about some real deal football right here on the Sko Show on Mile High Sports. Hope everybody is doing well out there. I am one half of the program, Aniello Piro. You can follow me on social at Media by AP. To my side here, the man himself, the forever buff, Mr. Chase Howell.
1/3. We got DB
1/3.
back behind the
Yes.
glass.
We've got DB behind the glass. He did not want to set up his microphone today. I think he's a little nervous about the Buffs in this upcoming game. But yes, super producer Danny Bailey in the background as well, holding it down for us. But like I said, to open up the show, my friend, here we are. We've got ourselves a game week.
It's finally here. I can't believe it. I mean, the summer has actually gone by pretty fast with all of fall camp. And I guess I've been out on the road, so this is my first time back in studio. We took a long break with the Sko Show. It kind of went by a little bit fast. Now Thursday's already here. We had college football this past Saturday, which was awesome. I just sat down and watched football the whole entire day. So we're fully back.
Let me say one thing, if I can, real quick. Florida State last year, I know it's a different team from last year to this year and whatnot, but they were chirping all last year about why they didn't make the college football playoff, and to see them just get hung out to dry in Ireland against Georgia Tech, like, that is college football. Chaos in game one, baby. Let's go.
One of the worst fan bases in all of college football. You hate to see it.
What Danny Cannell have to say about that?
Didn't have much. I think he was complaining a little bit about the officiating, typical Danny Cannell behavior, and I'm sure he's got some of my tweets saved for whenever if CU ends up losing a game like that, but he deserves everything he gets.
Yeah, I actually had the chance to interview Danny Cannell at the Super Bowl this past season on Radio Row, and the moment I brought up Deion and I'm from Colorado, that definitely got the juices flowing. So I'm sure
he's the king hater of the Florida State fans.
Yeah.
I don't even know why they hate Coach Prime so much, but they love to root against him.
Yeah, it is what it is. People love to hate on Coach Prime. And yes, this is the Sko Show right here on Mile High Sports. As Chase had alluded to, it was a rather quick off season, but we're back and we're ready to roll. And this is season 2 of the program. So if you guys had a chance to catch the show last year, we were on Mile High Sports Radio every Thursday. We have now moved to this beautiful new digital studio that we've built here at the Mile High Sports station. So we're going to be digital on YouTube. Make sure to subscribe to the Mile High Sports YouTube channel so that way you guys never miss an episode of the Sko Show. We've also got awesome content from Ryan Blackburn on the Nuggets, Cody Rourke and Troy Rank for the Broncos. Tons of content on the Mile High Sports YouTube channel to help fulfill your local sports needs. So make sure to subscribe. But
can we pause and note all this background right here? You got Nelson Spruce over your left shoulder there, little Big Al on the right shoulder.
Well, and that's the thing, man. When it comes to the history of Mile High Sports, like, we've been covering CU for upwards of 2 decades now, and it's just crazy to see how everything's evolved. And shout out to producer Danny for setting the magazines up back there. But that's the other thing I love about the covers is it really is kind of a glimpse back into the past of Colorado football, right? And I will say this: magazines might have some love for the CU fans coming out here in the next week or so.
When's that magazine set to come out?
I think within days, my friend. I'm hoping that the magazine will be out and ready to roll by the game this Thursday. So keep an eye out, Mile High Sports social media as well.
Us fans are going to want to have that magazine, put it somewhere in their room or whatever, their man cave, because I think it's going to be pretty cool.
As the kids like to say, it's going to be a must cop. It is going to be an absolute must cop of an issue. So, okay, let's dive into this game, though, my friend, as Colorado will kick off the season this Thursday, 6 p.m. Mountain Time kickoff. And you and I like to play the numbers as well. And I also think that the betting lines are just a good indication to see what the overall feel for this game, what the expectation for this game should be. And this line's actually inflated towards Colorado. I had seen 8.5, Colorado favored by 8.5 for a majority of the time leading up to this week. I open up the FanDuel Sportsbook and they're at -9.5 right now at -106. So decent price. You can get them under -110, coming back at -360 on the money line and a total of 58.5. So use the betting lines if you'd like. But what we're seeing here is an indication that the odds makers at least expect CU to win this game and win it thoroughly.
Yeah, I don't even know about the odds makers, but the sharps as well, it seems. The money seems to be flowing in the direction of the Colorado Buffaloes. It opened at around 7. I think that's an early look ahead line. That was probably back in February or so. I know we saw a lot of 8, 8.5 throughout the summer. Now it's 9.5. I'm seeing Caesars has already gone to 10, so we might see this line get all the way to 10. It seems like CU's getting a lot of the money. Patrick Everson I think he sent out a tweet about CU getting a significant amount of money at one of the sports books, and I'm sure we're going to get more detail as this week goes on. But yeah, it seems like the Sharps like the Buffs, and that's usually sometimes a good sign. It wasn't a great sign this past Saturday. It seemed like a lot of the Sharp movements, the Sharps went towards Florida State, who obviously lost. The Sharps went towards New Mexico in that other game. Who was it? Montana State. The Sharps were betting Montana State, and New Mexico just crushed them. Yeah. That line opened at 4, moved to like 7.5, 14, and by the end of it, and they were wrong. So you never know about the Sharps early on in the year, but it does seem like they want to bet the Buffaloes.
Yeah, no, I think that's a good point. And I feel like with handicapping college sports too, it's always a little more difficult because of the turnover from year to year. You're also talking in the Buffs instance, moving from conference to conference. I know that there's some familiarity there, but at the end of the day, 9.5 is a pretty big number for any team. And I'm a little surprised. I'm not going to lie that CU's as heavily favored as they are, because you hear all the noise on social media. You see how down some national media is on CU. I mean, Shedeur Sanders and company, some of the other guys left off the Pac-12 All-Pro team entirely. So there's a very wide range of opinions on CU. On one hand, you've got a lot of people that are all in and think that Coach Prime and company are going to push for double-digit wins and try to make the college football playoff. On the other hand, you got people that are saying 4 wins once again. And so I think that range is really wide. And that's why I'm also just excited to get to this game, because as I mentioned on last week's episode, give me 2 quarters of football and I think we'll know right away what this team will be.
Yeah, it's interesting because I'm not sure if it's an indication on what the public feels about the Buffaloes or if it's an indication on North Dakota State, because it seems like a lot of the Sharps have actually bet down the win total this season. I've seen it a lot at 5.5. Some places have moved it to 6. So it seems like the Sharps have kept that number pretty far down, but they're also betting on CU to win this game. So it might be an indication about what people expect from North Dakota State, who's kind of slowed down in terms of their dominance of the FCS. They lost in the semifinals this past year. They're not winning the national championship of the FCS every year like they were before, and it seems like they have a lot to replace, especially offensively this season. So it might be an indication of what people think of that team. But seems like people have a good feel on CU and possibly being able to dominate this game.
Yeah, and we shall see. I'm excited about that. And for any of the CU faithful that are interested in getting together to watch this game, Mile High Sports is hosting a watch party at number 38 down there in Rhino. We'll be having some pre- and post-game live shows as well. So for any of the Buffs faithful that wants to come out, have a brew, watch the game, come on down to number 38. And that is also going to be our home for every single Colorado Buffaloes game throughout the season. My buddy Chase here will be joining me on that stage throughout the course of the year, and we'll be breaking down some Buffs. But I think you make a great point as well, that have the mighty fallen a little bit with North Dakota State, right? Because when you and I, 5-6 years ago, like that was like the Mike Tyson of the FCS, where it was just like, you were going up against them and you were going to likely lose, and it was going to likely be in convincing fashion. But you bring up the good point that maybe they're not quite as strong as they were in previous seasons. But in the fight game, the saying is styles make fights. And I think that applies to this game in particular, because North Dakota State as a program and as a unit, I think is going to be a lot different than a lot of the teams CU will play throughout the course of the season.
There's no doubt that it's a difficult matchup. This is a team that nobody usually wants to put on their schedules. I'm surprised that CU agreed to this, but it was probably around 8 to 10 years ago when they decided to schedule this game. But usually FBS teams try to avoid playing North Dakota State, especially this early in the season. We've seen them pull off plenty of upsets. I remember Kansas State a few years back, but they have a history of being able to take down FBS teams. It's never a good matchup. It's always tough. It's really due to the physicality of North Dakota State and their offensive line and their defensive line. They're just always going to be a tough team, especially early on in the season. But doing a little research on North Dakota State and looking at what they have, they only returned 2 starters on their offensive line, so it's not expected to be as dominant as usual. They do have one offensive lineman that could be going in the NFL draft, one of their returners. So they definitely have some talent down there. They return a quarterback that has started for the last 2 seasons, which is always going to be tough. I'm not sure if Cam Miller is of the same caliber as like a Trey Lance, Carson Wentz, some of the other big time quarterback names that have come out of that program. But they have some experience at quarterback that always makes a difference. Obviously, CU likes what they have at quarterback as well. But yeah, this is never a team that you want to play week 1.
Yeah, no, and I think that's why, obviously you're going to be excited and intrigued with a week one matchup and you're just kind of ready to go. But, Coach Prime even came out himself and said, I was hoping for a layup, and this is not only is this a difficult matchup, I think it's a complex matchup just because of who they are, the brand of football that they play. And we're going to see a lot of run heavy focus. And I was talking with some people that have a good understanding of North Dakota State. One person who had his kid, being looked at by North Dakota State as a recruit. And they're a blue collar organization, right? They bring in their lunch pails, they go to work, and they're going to try to run that ball down CU's throat. So immediately when I know that, I'm looking at that revamped defensive line, which is a major question mark already entering this season. They're going to get tested right away. And I'm looking at that linebacking core. Are they going to be able to get from sideline to sideline? Are they going to be able to get pressure up front and try to clog some of these gaps? Because if North Dakota State's going to be able to come into Folsom Field and establish the run, it might be a long, long night for the Buffaloes.
It's going to be a great early test, and I think the biggest question mark of this defense is the linebacking core, and we have heard some good things throughout fall camp, but these linebackers are going to get tested early and often, and it's not just North Dakota State's running backs, both quarterbacks that they're expected to play, as we mentioned, Cam Miller, but they also play a lot of Cole Payton, who is another running quarterback, and Cam Miller has run for over 1,600 yards, has 36 rushing TDs in his career so far, so you're not just paying attention to the running back. You got to be able to stop the quarterback in the run game, and it's going to be a big time test for both the linebackers and this defensive line. North Dakota State, they're not sure what they have at running back. They don't return their top two running backs this past year, so I'm not sure what we're going to see, but we do know that they're going to be able to run the football.
Yeah, and historically, that's just the type of program that they've been. So that's why I said styles make fights, right? And I just think it's such a unique kind of opening game for CU. Like last year was obviously unique as well. TCU, we all know how that went. I was walking around my parents' house screaming in disbelief because of how that game played out. But can I also say something less about the game in particular? We talked about how last year Colorado was the biggest story in all of sports, right? They took over the sports world. You had Dwayne The Rock Johnson up there. You had Lil Wayne performing live. You had ESPN's First Take and Fox's Undisputed. You had College Game Day back in Boulder for the first time in forever. I'm not saying the Buffs aren't going to be the biggest story in sports once again. I do think they're the most intriguing, though, because coming out of the gate last year against TCU and then beating Nebraska and then beating CSU, that 3-0 start was a bit of a magic carpet ride. And I think a lot of people, it's recency bias. They remember the last thing they saw, and they remember a Buffs team that couldn't generate many wins down the stretch. And so while I'm optimistic and I'm excited about this Buffaloes team, I still remember that as well, which is why I think there's a lot of excitement. But I also personally have a little bit of, I don't want to say reservation, but I'm a little bit like, let's see. Right, I got a little hoodwinked last year after the 3-0 start. I'm very curious to see if they can get out to a similar type of start this year.
I think we're going to know early. I think we're going to know by the first half what this team is all about. And of course, all of us are very curious. And we talked about this a lot on our last show, but we just don't quite know what to expect from this team. We know they have a very much improved roster. We know that they're more talented than they were last year, but there's a lot of question marks with the coaching staff, how this team's going to look. So I think we're going to know early, and I think a lot of people are going to be intrigued about what they're going to see because you get a Thursday night primetime game, obviously one of the biggest stories in college football. I feel like a lot of people are going to tune in to see what the Colorado Buffaloes are all about.
Yeah, no, I completely agree. All right, let's talk about this roster in an interesting dynamic because there's a ton of turnover, right? We're gonna see right away how these guys fit with this team, what Coach Prime is trying to build over the course of the offseason. But a lot of new faces, some familiar guys that are returning and whatnot. But who are some guys, in your opinion, Chase, that you've got your eye on, maybe on breakout watch? Who are some potential stars for this CU team this season?
Offensively, I think you got to look right at the wide receivers. This wide receiving core is so deep and so talented. And I think what we've really seen throughout fall camp, at least the videos that we're able to watch well off media, as well as that scrimmage that they had at All City Field down here in Denver, Will Shepherd, the Vanderbilt transfer, he just looks like an absolute dog. He's very hard to guard with his size, 6'3", 6'4". Seems like he's built a nice rapport with Shedeur. He came in late. He wasn't here during spring ball, so they haven't had too much time to try to build that chemistry, but it seems like he has become Shedeur's go-to guy throughout fall camp, and I think he's going to be really dominant. They have plenty of guys at wide receiver, but I'm going to be pointing to Will Shepherd. I think LeJontay Wester, Obviously, Jimmy Horn, who we've become accustomed to, are good as well. And then that's not even mentioning Travis Hunter. So I'm very, very excited about the wide receivers offensively. And then defensively, I think you point to that same side. It's the cornerbacks. And it's not quite Travis Hunter, although we know what we're going to get from him. But DJ McKinney, I think, has been one of the most impressive guys throughout fall camp. Coach Prime called him out the other day during one of those pre-practice meetings that they had, and he pointed to number 8, and he said that guy made him some money during practice yesterday. He said all the scouts were talking about him. So you got Preston Hodge, DJ McKinney, and then you can kind of throw Travis Hunter wherever you want. Colton Hood, the Auburn transfer, is also impressed at the cornerback position. So they have a lot more talent there than they did the year previous. It seemed like last year they had a couple guys at corner. Omarion Cooper stepped up a little bit. Obviously, we saw a little bit of Cormani McLean, but they have so much more talent at the cornerback position. I'm excited to see, because if you're able to lock down that side and you let these pass rushers get loose, I think that's the other probably best part about this defense is the depth that they have at defensive end and outside linebacker. So if you let those pass rushers get loose, if you're able to bring 5 guys and you run a lot of man coverage on the outside, I think this defense will be very, very impressive. And as you mentioned, North Dakota State, we're expecting them to run the ball a lot. So we might not see the ability of this pass defense, but I think they're going to really struggle to throw the football against this team.
Well, and I think let's run with that thought here for a second. Like, naturally, this CU, I think, is better built to defend the pass maybe a little bit more than the run. You've talked about some of the question marks at linebacker and on the defensive line, but if they're able to get pressure without having to blitz on every single play in order to generate that, you feel so comfortable with your secondary, both your cornerbacks and your safety, that if you are going to send a couple of extra rushers and you're going to have to play one-on-one on the outside, you have complete confidence in Travis Hunter. You have complete confidence in that secondary that you can afford to take a few more risks on the defensive side of the ball.
And that kind of goes for run defense as well. It also means that you can throw a lot more guys into the box and just make sure you stop the run, because you know that if they decide to pass, we got that covered on the outside. So I think it opens up a lot of things when your secondary is this talented. Now, safety is a little bit of a question mark to me. I don't know how much we'll get into the safeties, but we know the returner, Shiloh Sanders, Cam Silman Craig. But both of those guys, I don't think are elite college football safeties. They're going to be serviceable. They're going to be good. And they've obviously played a lot of football, which helps. But it's really the corners that I think is the bright spot of this defense.
And when you have as much quality talent at cornerback as you do, I think that in theory takes some of the load off of the burden for the safeties, right? When you're that strong at that position on the outside, it should help the safeties play a little bit more that secondary type of coverage. But good points from Chase. I'm excited for this defensive line. Obviously, BJ Green's going to be a big one. Shane Cokes as well. Just there's a couple of different guys on the line that I've got. And it starts and ends in the trenches for me, both on offense and defense. Like, those are the two big question marks that I have. And obviously there's more around that, but if they're going to be able to be solid up front, they're going to be able to be solid across the board, in my opinion. I love that you still got a guy like Trevor Woods, someone who's been here through the worst of it pre-Deion, was here last year for year 1 of Deion, and now is hoping to kind of put it all together. So I like the veteran leadership.
A guy that threw on 20 pounds during the offseason. Mm-hmm. They say he's pushing 220 now. He's actually got true linebacker size. Still that athleticism, and they talk about his instincts, but he is a true linebacker now, and I'm excited to see what that is, because they moved him to linebacker like right in the middle of the season. So he still looked like a safety out on that football field playing the linebacker position. Now I'm excited to see him 20 pounds heavier, more of a true linebacker. I think he's going to be a really good player on this defense.
Yeah, no, I tend to agree with you. And then I've said this in season 1 of the Sko Show. I've got to say it again. I may have even said it last week, to be honest with you, but the guy obviously on the offensive line that I'm personally most excited to see is Jordan Seaton. And you and I were on top of that with his recruiting process. I believe we were live on the air the day in which he committed to playing for Colorado. I had the opportunity to meet with him briefly at the Super Bowl on Radio Row down there in Las Vegas last year, shook his hand. That dude's a unit. Like, he is an absolute freak of nature when it comes to his size. And I was with super producer Danny Bailey over the weekend on Saturday, and there was some CU faithful, some CU contingent there, one person who actually works in and around the organization, and I was talking about Jordan Seaton, and I was like, I told that exact same story. I was like, he's huge, and the first thing that this guy told me is, you're going to be surprised at how well he moves at his size. And so I know that, Colorado is starting a true freshman at offensive line to block Shador, like, that's a recipe for disaster. all indications are that they've got one of the best offensive line prospects in recent memory, and he can move, and he's got the size. So I'm excited.
Yeah, I think one of the more impressive things about what he has done so far is he really hasn't given up that spot. They've moved him a little bit at right tackle. I think he's going to end up playing left tackle, but we'll see what they end up starting with. I think they have brought in enough depth to give him some competition, and it seems like he's been the starter throughout spring, throughout fall camp. So I think that's really impressive. They did not want to just give him this spot. They brought in a lot of depth to compete with him. And I think the fact that he has been able to hold that down, I think is a really good sign for what they have in Jordan Seed.
Well, and you're talking about arguably the most important position on the offensive line, guarding Shador's blind side there at left tackle.
Exactly.
So it's they brought him in for a reason. I'm sure he got a couple of these. Sure, he got a nice bag to come on over to Boulder and play for Colorado, and looks like he's going to be the guy. But we've talked offensive line, we've talked defensive line. Any other position groups or players in particular that you got your eye on for a breakout season?
Well, the one defensive lineman, and I know we got into a little bit about the edge rushers, but Chidozie Nwankwo, I'm very excited about on the inside. You watch his Houston film, and he just takes up so much space. He's a little guy at 5'10", 5'11", in terms of height, but he brings it in terms of his strength and his power and his ability to take on the interior offensive linemen. I think he's going to be a key cog in being able to stop the run. I don't think CU has had a defensive tackle like that in a very long time, and I think that just it helps out your linebackers. It helps out pretty much your entire defense when you have a guy like that in the middle. So I'm excited to see what he brings to this team.
It also helps when you have one of the most disruptive players in NFL history, who's also your coach in Warren Sapp, the NFL Hall of Famer. So I'm looking for some dogs, man. I'm looking for them to get after the quarterback. And I know that Coach Prime, what do you call them? Dogs and something else. I forget what the term was. Or was it he calls them dogs instead of captains?
Leaders and dogs.
Leaders and dogs. Yes, exactly.
Dogs.
Like, I'm looking for some bite this season from that defensive line from CU. Not only because I think they have the talent, but when you've got one of the all-time greats defensive lineman as your coach, I'm expecting big results. So
he announced who will be wearing the L on their chest, but he said we're gonna wait to see who gets that D right before the game. Pause, but you know what I mean.
Yeah,
whoever gets that D.
Yeah. No diddy. But no, we'll see. Throw me off there. No, I'm excited, man. 50,000 plus. It
wouldn't be a Sko Show without us.
And we're on YouTube now.
That's true.
We could have said that on the radio, but I don't know if the radio demo would have gotten it.
No, Danny would start reaching for that button again.
The dumb button. That's how it goes. But yeah, man, Thursday evening, rather, I should say, 50,000 plus people are going to pack out Folsom Field for the first game of the season for the Colorado Buffaloes. I cannot wait. It has been a fast off season, but you kind of get to this portion of the year where it is the dog days of summer. You've kind of been itching for football, and it's about to be back. So I am stoked for it. But expectations are real, right? We've been talking. There's been a lot of hype. Last year was about getting your feet wet. Look, this is the season for Coach Prime in Colorado. Like, they've got to do some real damage if they want to live up to the expectations and the standard in which they set for themselves when he took this job initially. So we know that the schedule is a little tough, at least out of the gate. North Dakota State, Nebraska, CSU on the road with those last two games as well. And we know where the win total's at, 5.5. We also know where this line is at for the game against North Dakota State. Let me ask you this. Let's start with the game in particular. Does CU start out with a victory on Thursday?
Absolutely. I think there's a lot of different ways that this game can go, but I just think that the talent that CU has is going to overwhelm North Dakota State. And I think North Dakota State's going to come in hungry, but I think they're going to be really surprised at the overall talent level of what Colorado brings. And I think that might just end up overwhelming them. Might be a little bit of a slow start, but I think the amount of talent that CU has is going to end up pulling out the win. Now, are they going to be able to cover the 9.5? That might be a little bit more tough. I think it could be a closer game than most people expect, but I do think they're going to come out with the win.
Here's what I'll say too, and I feel like college sports, as much as anything, is where you can lean into the narratives a little bit from a betting perspective. If I was a completely neutral observer not doing this show, I'd be all over the plus 9.5 for North Dakota State. Fine saying that. I think CU wins this game. I just think it's going to be, I got a lot of respect for North Dakota State, and I've got a lot of respect for the talent that CU has, but I'm looking for teamwork and team effort, and that's where I'm so curious about with this game. So I like CU to win the game. I think it might be a close one. Hopefully it's more than a field goal victory. Like a nice 7-point victory would be fantastic. But we shall see. But I do like CU to get out to a good start.
Well, and what's the formula to pulling off an upset? It's usually being able to run the football, slowing the game down, especially when you're going up against an explosive offense and you're going up against a quarterback like Shedeur Sanders. They're going to try to hold on to the football as much as they can. So if they're able to run and slow the game down, I feel like this game's going to be close. Now, if CU has the ball in their hands as much as they want to, they're going to be able to put up a lot of points. So if North Dakota State comes in and just tries to slow everything down and try to make it a field goal game, then I do see this game being pretty close.
I think that's a phenomenal point that you bring up, that you can't let North Dakota State play their brand of football. You need to bring the game to them. You need to make them feel uncomfortable from the jump, right? Force them to throw the ball. Don't allow them to establish the run. Make this thing 14-0 before they've even blinked.
Right.
Like that's the type of energy.
That would be the perfect scenario.
Yeah. You have to come out there and punch them in the mouth. You win the coin toss. I'm taking the ball. I'm marching 80 yards down the field in the blink of an eye. That's how I'm going about it if I'm CU.
If you let them hang in there for too long, you're going to get yourself in trouble.
Yeah. So. No, I tend to agree as well. So it'll be an exciting one. And once again, folks, for anyone that is looking to watch the game, come on down to number 38 in Rhino. We'll be having a Mile High Sports watch party, the first of many throughout this season at number 38. And you know what, Chase? ESPN College Game Day also picked CU to win this game. Every member on the desk picked CU to win the game.
Have to do that?
I don't know if that's a good thing.
Can somebody pick North Dakota State, please? Just throw one in there.
You're telling me Pat McAfee off the Guinness couldn't, just show some love to the team that also wears green?
Right. Just somebody throw in North Dakota State, please.
That's the only thing that concerns me a little bit is a lot of public love. You talked about the numbers of the tickets and all that kind of stuff on CU. So a lot of public love for the Buffaloes. But
Nick Saban, though, he says he loves
his
Colorado.
Aflac buddy.
I'm all for Coach Prime, man. He's doing a great job at Colorado. His son is a great quarterback, and I think that'll be the difference in the game. And I think they'll take the next step in terms of a team this year, and they'll start out with a win the first week.
He's all in on Coach Prime, so you like to hear that.
Yeah, he is. Okay, let's talk about for the season as well before we get out of here. A lot, like I said, a wide range of expectations for this CU team. A lot of people think they'll win 4 games. A lot of people think they contend for a natty. Where do you fall? What do you think the end game is for the Buffs here?
I mean, I know it's a little bit lame, but probably somewhere right in the middle of that. I think 7-8 games is probably the right expectation here. 7-8 wins. Could they get 9-10? Yeah, I think a lot of things would have to go right for that to happen. Just looking at the schedule, there's just a lot of coin flip games in there. I think they probably win at least 2 out of their first 3, 2 out of the 3 non-con games, and then a lot of their conference games are going to be coin flips, and we're just going to see if they have what it takes to be able to pull those out. And that's kind of similar to what ended up happening last year. It's just they didn't win any of those coin flip games during conference play, probably besides Arizona State. You lose to Stanford by a score, lose to Arizona by a score, lose to USC by a score. And so if they're able to pull out those games, I do see a path to winning around 9 games, but I kind of expect it to be, I think 7 is probably a good number. I think 8 wouldn't be surprising, but if they're able to get to 10, then that's going to be a really, really good year.
I think you bring up a good point as well, that they only got blown out in 2 games, right? So they were in a lot of these games last year, and you're expecting this roster to be significantly better this year with a schedule that's, Pac-12 best conference in football last year from a talent perspective. So I think that's very much on the table. I'll keep it very simple. We're going bowling. We're going bowling, and we're going to be doing a Sko Show on the road.
Peggy's going bowling.
Yeah, Peggy's going bowling. The Buffs are going bowling, which means 6+ wins. I think they get themselves back in a bowl game for the first time since the Alamo Bowl?
Mm-hmm.
All those years ago?
COVID year Alamo Bowl.
I don't count that.
COVID year Alamo Bowl, and then 2016. Yeah. 2016 Alamo Bowl.
Yeah, so I think they're going bowling. I think they'll be better than they were last year. And we're going to try to get out on the road for that bowl game if that's the case.
Absolutely.
So, all right, good stuff. For Chase Howell, I am Aniello Piro. Season 2 of the Sko Show is here. Make sure to subscribe to the Mile High Sports YouTube channel so that way you guys never miss an episode. And also, if you're looking for a place to watch the games, come on down to number 38 in Rhino, where we'll be all season long for some Mile High Sports CU Buffs watch parties. Looking forward to it. We'll be there this Thursday for the opening game against North Dakota State. And we'll have some fun with that. But any closing thoughts real quick before we get out?
Sko Buffs. Just get me to Thursday, baby.
Sko Buffs, baby. All right, for Chase, I'm AP, super producer Danny Bailey, my guy back there. I know he's hyped up for the season as well. Game 1 is here. It's game week, just a few days away, couple days away, probably when you're watching this video, from kickoff of the Colorado Buffalo season 2 of the Coach Prime era. We'll talk to you guys later, and Sko Buffs for now.
Sko Buffs.